So for a little while now, I have been wanting to expand into different areas and in topics that are really interesting to me, such as finance, like the one we're going to be talking about on this episode. And I want to approach this podcast as a more holistic approach of looking at the career of young engineers. I know for a little while we're talking about um, projects for international organizations, like the episode with Bridges to Prosperity and the episode that I did a while ago, talking about some of the things to keep in mind when working on these developing countries with these nonprofit organizations. We have had topics on new technologies, like a few weeks ago, and those are topics that are really interesting to me. But I think I want to start transitioning into a more holistic approach and looking at maybe how to integrate finance into your career, or the importance of maintaining a balance between your health and your career. That is something I've struggled a lot in the recent years, and I'm working on finding a solution for me in terms of accommodating working out or eating healthier, and find that time in my schedule to be able to do those activities I know that are super important. So I hope this episode is the beginning of something bigger on this podcast, where I'll be talking a little bit more on the holistic approach of becoming a great engineer and becoming leaders in the profession. So in this episode, I talk with Nicolai. He's an amazing engineer. He's a civil engineer that is also doing a lot of things on the side with his finance business, his organization, Engineer U, which is, again, focused on finances and focusing on bringing you the tools you need to succeed in your career. So I was very happy to see with Nicolai today, and he's a fantastic person. We got talking about some of the ideas behind finance, and how some people see debt, and how some people see the importance of saving for retirement and emergency funds, and all these things that are really interesting to me. And I've been diving a lot into this topic on my own, reading books, articles, and overall just trying to learn and educate myself on this topic. So it was great talking to him. It was great just experiencing a new perspective. So there were some things we talk about, like finding a balance between having a lot of debt and just praying for everything in cash. And what I want you to get from this episode is find something that works for you. And I think this is something I repeat a lot on this podcast, because I don't think I have all the answers. I don't think anyone has all the answers for everyone. But I'm just giving you my perspective, sharing my knowledge, and hopefully something resonates with you that you can take that information and apply it to your own career. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Nicolai. He's a fantastic engineer, and I was very happy to bring him to the podcast today. So welcome back to another episode of the Engineer Future Podcast. I'm your host, Luis Duque. And this week we talked to Nicolai. He's an amazing engineer doing a lot of things, doing a lot of great things with his career, with his company, Engineering You, and overall just doing amazing things that I hope you get a lot of value out of this episode. Welcome to the Engineering Our Future Podcast, a podcast where I bring you relevant content from personal experience and guests to help young engineers, students, and international students succeed in their careers. So welcome, Nicolai. We've been meaning to record this episode for a little while now. I know I just finished the P exam a few weeks ago, and I'm sure you've been busy with work and everything, but happy to have you here. Talk about money, which is a great topic as an engineer, someone that is working hard to get out of the 9 to 5 cycle and paycheck to paycheck cycle. So I'm very happy to have you here. Do you want to just tell the listeners a little bit of your journey in finance and as an engineer as well, and how you have been able to balance basically your day job as well as all the things you do outside of work?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I definitely appreciate that, and I'm excited to be here. My journey, I guess, I graduated from Arizona State University in 2008. It was kind of a crazy financial time, if you have heard anything about the Great Recession, and it was difficult to get a job right out of school, but I was one of the lucky ones who was able to land that job right out of school. Um, my journey with personal finance started off pretty rocky. I did not know a lot. I did not have, a lot of education on personal finance. And so I just made a lot of poor financial decisions and grew quite a bit of debt. I ended up having about $149,000 in debt worth of credit cards, car loans, and student loans by the time I hit my mid 20s. So that was pretty bad. It was a little scary. Um, so since then, I've been educated. I've been working really hard over the last 10 years to get myself into a position financially that I can be a little bit more stable and somewhat independent. And it's been a good journey. I became a financial coach in 2014 to help other people with their money. I've worked with hundreds of people. Uh, Clients have paid off, over $1 million worth of debt and saved tons of money. And so it's just a passion of mine to talk about personal finance because I it impacted my life so much. And finances, as you know, impacts
Mhm.
your entire life. So it's a really important topic, and I try to talk as openly and freely as possible, sharing my own story with others. So hopefully they can learn something and make some changes on their own journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you reached out to me, I believe like 2 3 months ago now, I was very happy because you were on my list of someone that I wanted to interview for the podcast. Because here, I want to get a little bit outside the technical side of engineering. We all know our design codes and everything, but how can we become better engineers basically outside of work, in terms of finances, in terms of personal development, in terms of networking, all of these things. So this is a topic that I have personally enjoyed for the past 2 years. When I um, got out of school, I was very fortunate to not have student loans, and unfortunately, I did get quite a bit of credit card debt when I was in school, and the years kind of after that, which it basically changed my mindset of money. I always thought that as an entry level engineer, I was never going to have enough money, and I was struggling with just paying the basic needs. And with a growing family, I just had to get my finances in order and start budgeting better and start finding better solutions on how to use the money, and what's really important in my career. So I think the time we are on right now, it's kind of very similar somewhat to 2008, where a lot of people got laid off, a lot of people lost their jobs. New students are really struggling to find the jobs. What would you tell those younger engineers and the students that are in that situation right now, and how did you handle your personal situation back in 2008?
Sure. No, that's a great question. Um, for me, it was all about my networking. I was fortunate enough to get an internship in college and
Mm-hmm.
meet quite a few professionals in industry here in Phoenix. And so when I threw out my net of resumes, I was able to then follow up with my network, and luckily one of the people I had interned with in the past gave me my first job. So it's obviously if you're graduating in the next few days, networking and getting an internship will be a little bit more difficult. But there are society meetings that you can get involved with. There's organizations, volunteering. I would just jump in as much as you can and meet those people. And you never know when those relationships are really going to pay off for you.
Yeah, and honestly, I found the job that I have right now through networking. I had to apply to this company. I kind of stay in touch with the owner, and back in 2019, the end of 2019, the company I was working for had to close because of different reasons. This was because before COVID and everything. But I was very glad to have that connection and basically stay in touch after they decided to go with someone else, and after I reach out to them, basically within 48 hours I already had a job offer from them.
Hmm.
So the power of networking, and I think this topic keeps coming up every single episode. Yeah, and for students and young engineers to realize that having a network, just socializing with people on LinkedIn or Instagram or social media, uh, liking their posts, just sharing ideas and thoughts, commenting on their posts is a way to get your personal brand out there, and help you create that network. And you are not the first person that tells me that you found a job because of networking. So
Yep.
very important topic, and very important topic to share here, and to for our students to realize as well. Because it was funny, a few weeks ago, I gave a presentation to the students at South Dakota State University, which was the university I graduated from. And the professor was telling me that all the students, or 80% of the students, did not want to go to a career fair because they were freshmen or they were sophomore, and either they already had a job for the summer or they knew who they wanted to work for the rest of their lives, so they didn't see value in going there and meeting new people and talking to the companies. And she was very disappointed because that's how you meet the companies in your area, both get exposed to interviews and talking to people and learning what the industry is looking for. So hearing you say that you found the job in 2008, knowing all these circumstances that was going on because of networking, hopefully it tells the listeners something about the true importance of networking. So let's just start talking about the financial side of your career and your journey. I know you are a financial coach and you have worked with many people. What are some of the things that you have done or seen other people do to become either financially independent or financially stable in their careers, even if, when they work a day job in engineering like you and I do?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I always start when I talk about this, and if I were to share my number one tip for anybody, it would just be to learn how to do a budget and do a budget. I have been debt free now for almost 5 years. Um, I am lucky enough that because I've put myself into a financial situation, I get to choose to work less hours. So, I don't have to work 40 hours. I actually get to work about 32 hours a week and still pay all my bills and have no stress doing any of that and save for retirement and all those sorts of things. Even with a family, I have 3 kids and I'm able to support all of them because of wise financial choices that we have now got into over the last few years. But doing a budget is going to be your number one tool, whether you're in debt, out of debt, investing, whatever it is, like that's going to be your number one. Help to be proactive rather than reactive
Mhm.
with your money. And sure, there's going to be things that are going to require some reaction, like an emergency or something like that. But, we even want to be proactive and get that emergency fund savings. So that would be kind of my next step on top after the budget is build that emergency fund. Emergencies are going to happen. I mean, literally just last week or 2 weeks ago, my wife had to run to the hospital for something. And over the next few weeks, we are going to be seeing some very, very large bills, and I don't want to rely on any person or family member or bank or credit card or GoFundMe page if I have an emergency. If I had to rely on any of those, I think that's a pretty clear indicator that I'm not financially independent or stable at all.
Mhm.
So, getting 3 to 6 months worth of expenses saved up for that emergency fund is going to be key. Um, Now, after that, I would probably go right into paying off debts. You know, I think that's awesome that you didn't graduate with any student loans. Congratulations. Hopefully, those scholarships and grants and all those sorts of things. But for those of us who maybe had student loans or maybe are going to go into a car loan or credit cards, whatever that might be, pay that off as soon as possible. Um, Debt, in my opinion, like just chokes your income, and it's really hard to understand this concept and being debt free, and because our culture normalizes credit and loans so much that that's just the normal. Being in debt or having a balance, it's kind of just normal. But once you don't owe anybody any money and you're in complete control of your entire paycheck, it's the most incredible feeling in the world. Now, I will admit, I do still have a mortgage, so yes, I do still have a
Mhm.
debt. But when I'm talking about debts, I'm talking about those car loans and student loans and credit cards or personal loans. So paying those off is going to be key. I mean, when I was in my worst, I'm in my mid 20s, and I'm making maybe $60,000 or whatever it was at that time. I had months where my total minimum payments on my non-mortgage debt was over $1,000. I mean, that completely choked my income. What are you going to do
Mhm.
and invest and save and adventures like all of that? You're unable to do wisely and well if you have that debt. So paying off that would be probably the next one. And the last one is just investing. And I'm sure we'll talk about investing a little bit more here in a little bit. But investing as early as you possibly can and as much as you possibly can early on is going to be kind of my last major tip.
Yeah, that sounds like a great path to follow, for anyone that is looking to get out of debt and start actually saving money for emergencies and investing and doing all these great things. One question I have for you is, I know this is something that not two people do the same, but how do you save your emergency fund? Do you have like a savings account? Do you have part of it? I've heard people use sometimes their Roth IRA as part of like the emergency fund, or they have something invested. And I know they have, even in a bear market, when the stock market is crashing, they're gonna have enough money there for an emergency. How do you save, and where do you keep your emergency fund?
Yeah, I like you answered it well. That a lot of people use different variety of ways to do it. I would please recommend that you don't have it all stuffed in your stock drawer at home, where you have like $15,000 in cash just laying around. But we also want to make sure that it's liquid and accessible.
Hmm.
As like if I need it tomorrow, I can get access to it. So personally, I use online banks for that.
Yeah.
You could just use, like, let's say you have Bank of America or Chase or Wells Fargo. You could just open up a savings account with one of them and do that. Um, but and this is one of the things I've learned about myself. If I see it, I like to spend money. If I see it, I'm going to spend it. So I had to put it in an account somewhere else where I can access, obviously, but I'm not going to see it on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So that's where I put our emergency fund.
Yeah, it's so funny to, after I finish paying off all my credit cards and everything, when you start saving money in accounts that you don't really see, or it just comes out directly from your paycheck, and you kind of forget about it, and you're like 5 6 months down the road, you're gonna check it, and it's like hundreds or thousands of dollars already there without even thinking about it. And that's something I realized when we actually, either we're starting to think about like just attacking the credit card hard, and after that is, even if you put 50 extra dollars towards your credit card payment, or saving $50, may be hard the first couple of months, but eventually you're gonna forget about that money, and you're gonna adjust your lifestyle, to fit your new budget.
Hmm.
I can't remember who said this, but if the government for some reason starts a new 5% tax on top of your income, you cannot tell them, I'm not gonna pay that. You're gonna have to pay that, adjust your income. So why not tackle your savings and paying your credit cards the same way? Like, just put an additional 1 2% from what you're doing right now, and slowly increment that to the point where it's comfortable to you to live a decent lifestyle, but at the same time you're saving enough money or paying down your debt, faster, and without even realizing.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, I was going to add to that. So one thing that I did learn, and again, everybody has a different path, and something that worked well for me was just I just focus on one thing at a time,
Mhm.
and if I were to have put all the eggs in different baskets and a little bit of savings and a little bit of 401k and a little bit of debt payments, honestly, I'd probably still have some debts.
Mhm.
So for me, I just went all in on the debts and I worked as many extra hours as my work would allow me. I worked extra jobs. I mean, I was in my mid to late 20s mowing people's lawns. Like, that's how aggressive I got on wanting to get out of this debt. I mean, I paid off $149,000 in 3.5 years. And
Yeah.
at that time, I was averaging about seventy to $80,000 in salary. So the math does not make sense at all when you just look at my
Mhm.
salary. But all of that extra income went hardcore towards that debt. And then I was able to use all of those. At that point, I had gotten used to $1,500 debt payments or around that number. Then I was able to throw all of that savings and build up my emergency fund really fast. So I kind of went just step by step. But again, everybody has different plans.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. Like, something that works for you may not work for me, and I just like to. I've read books from people that hate debt, people that use debt to leverage their money, and somewhere in between. And it's just healthy just to have the different perspectives, and really realize what works for you and what doesn't. So I
Totally.
don't think anything we're talking about here today is gonna help you 100%. in your journey to having a healthier relationship with money, but just taking some of the things that may resonate with you. It's kind of what we're going after. What about someone that's just graduating from school? They have student debt, maybe have some credit card debt. They're earning more money than they have ever earned in their life with a new job in civil engineering or any other engineering. What should be the first thing they do after they graduate?
Yeah, that's a great. Again, I am not a fan of debt just because now I'm on the other side of things and I see how that has freed up my life and my stress and I mean, I'm flexible, like all these other things, all these abilities I have because I don't have this debt. So I would pay off debt as soon as possible. But we've already kind of talked about that. So then my next tip would be once you pay off that debt, invest as much as you possibly can, as early as you possibly can. Uh, I mentioned I graduated in 2008, so it's 13 years ago. Last October, I hit my first 1 million cumulative dollars of gross salary. And just a fun fact, I traded 27,000 hours of my life for that $1 million. And yes, I have a spreadsheet that I have tracked every hour that I've worked since graduation to back all of that up. But if I had invested 15% of my salary since I graduated and it had grown at about 8%, it might be worth like $275,000 by now. And that's just a rough number.
Mhm.
And instead, because of my life choices and how my financial journey has gone, I'm way behind that. I'm maybe closer to about 100,000. Let's just use that as a round number. So from here on, if I'm 35, and let's say I want to try to retire at the age of 55, so I'm just going to invest $1,000 per month for the next 20 years. If that was growing at 8%, that might be about $1 million. Starting with 100 now, and I would get to about 1 million then, which isn't terrible. I don't think that's terrible. But if I would have started at 15% right out of college and kept that up till now, and then invested $1,000 a month after that, it would have been about $1.9 million. So it was almost close to $1 million mistake that I
Mhm.
made because I did not invest earlier. Now, even $1,000, I should be investing a lot more than that because if I want to try to invest 15% of my salary, that'll grow and that'll grow over time as my salary grows. But that's just, round numbers to kind of make a point that investing early and often is huge for these, young graduates.
Yeah, the power of compounding is crazy, and the funny thing is you don't really realize or do even think how much it matters to both start early and find ways to invest in money with low fees. Like even a 1% fee is gonna cut your gains so much, and a lot of people don't even think about that, especially if they don't know or they haven't really done the math.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, there's probably a whole nother conversation that could be had about personal financial advisors and financial professionals. I use an advisor, and he does have a fee on all of my investments, but that's one thing that I have chosen to do, and I know people who are super against that and they want to do it on their own, and that's what they choose. But one of the things I love to say is, personal finance is personal, and what I choose to do is not wrong. What you choose to do is not wrong, but hopefully you can learn from a variety of different people, and like you said, kind of go with what resonates most with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so with that being said, what is one thing I know you kind of touched this a little bit, but what is one thing you wish you had done earlier? I'm guessing it's investing, but is there something else you wish you had started earlier or done differently after you graduated from school and got your first job?
Yeah. So covered investing and budgeting already. If I were to really just narrow it down, I would probably just say in just education and planning. You know, learning, like we've already said, learning from other people, learning from people we might look up to, learning from other people's mistakes, learning from your parents' mistakes or your friends' mistakes, whoever it is, getting educated on personal finance and then think ahead, think what's important to you. I personally made a ton of terrible decisions because I wasn't educated. I didn't know much about money, compound interest. I didn't understand any of that. I just kind of followed what was modeled for me and what my friends were doing. I just didn't realize that they were dumb and broke. And I acted dumber and I got broker. So, I just, my lack of education really hurt me. And on that education line, if I were to think of one thing in education that I've learned, one tip is the idea of opportunity cost. And that has really guided a lot of my big decision making. So just a quick example. Um, I have a Corolla. It's got 180,000 miles on it. So I'm already thinking of, okay, what's going to be my next car? Hoping this gets me to 200 or 220,000 miles. But I'm thinking about my next car already. So I could be thinking about a $50,000 Tesla, or I could be thinking of just another $20,000 Corolla. And so that's a difference of $30,000, right? If you were just to think if I were to pay cash for each one. So I could think of that as, okay, I'm just going to do this and that car is going to depreciate and that investment is gone. It's a terrible investment. I could think of that as, okay, I'm going to put all that $30,000 into an investment and let it grow for 20 years. And that might turn into about $300,000, over the course of those years. Or maybe a combination of I'm going to take a $10,000 really nice vacation and then invest the rest, and I have $200,000 and I have a car that gets me from A to B. But just thinking things through. Now, I don't want you to be
Mhm.
crippled by this thought process and get paralyzed by that, right? But I don't think we evaluate long term things enough, you know, and especially these big dollar things. And like, do I want to buy $2,000 worth of golf clubs right now, or are my golf clubs fine? Just thinking a little bit more long term. So getting educated, opportunity cost was a huge thing that I had learned that really helped for me. And then on the planning side, I wish I would have just thought about what was important to me. Where did I want to go? What matters? What values did I align with? I love spending time with friends, but going out and spending $100 or $200 on a weekend with some friends, yeah, it was fun, but it didn't really like align with what I felt was important. I could have gone out and spent $10 that weekend and been just as fine. And I could have maybe invested or saved that for a vacation, a nice trip.
Mhm.
So I think those education and planning, I really wish I would have done that a lot earlier. And that could have helped guide me to a much different place than I am now at the age of 35.
Yeah, and I think as engineers, I mean, we're smart people. We know numbers. That's kind of what we do every single day. And we also tend to get caught in the details too much, making sure everything is optimized 100% or everything is perfect. But we first need to define what has true value in our lives, and I think that's kind of what you were referring to here. It's understanding what's important to you. And I know for me, it's just traveling. I'm from Colombia, so going back and see my family in Colombia is really important. And maybe going out and drinking every weekend is something that I don't value, and I'm not gonna put money there when I can put it into travel and visiting my family. But someone here could value spending time with friends, and they like going out every weekend, and that's what's important to them, and they could care less about traveling. So finding what's really important for you and putting all your energy into your top priorities has more value than um, following what other people are doing and trying to match what your priorities are, because that's not what I'm going to value. So it's realizing what's important and putting the effort and the money into those goals.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing with you completely.
Yeah. And so that I kind of got from Ramit Sethi. I'm sure you have heard of him. I've read the book recently, and he's big on recognizing what's really valuable to you and developing that rich life that it's going to bring happiness to you. And that doesn't mean you're going to have to never drink coffee in your life outside of a house or something, but it's just understand that if you're going to do that, you're going to have to cut in other areas that may not be as important. So that's something I have put some thought into recently with a growing family. We have two children, so it's everything is just more expensive. Traveling, going out, so it's trying to prioritize and understand where our values are. So you mentioned you have helped people as a financial coach outside of work. What has that experience been being an engineer? And it was just something that you were really passionate about and just kind of sharing what you have learned? Or was it something that you actually pursue and got training and now you kind of teaching other people how to manage their money and give them advice?
Yeah, I just saw how personal finances really impacted my life and how it changed my life completely. I mean, it when I got a handle on my money, it not only changed my finances, it changed my relationships, it changed
Hmm.
my career, it changed my hobbies and adventure. Like it touches everything. So it changed everything when I got a handle on it. So I actually went through a financial coaching program and got trained, and so that's where I started. And continuing to coach people has been, I mean, it's one of my favorite things. I mean, I have been pumped all day knowing I was going to get to talk to you about money. Like, I cannot wait to talk to people about money. I try to bring it up as often as possible. Probably too much because it can be a personal topic and a little bit of a, people don't love to really open up about it. But I feel like when I do that and I share my story and I share real numbers and I do all these things, it gives them that kind of permission back to share. And so we have really great conversations about it. And um, yeah, so it's something I've just really been passionate about for a number of years, and I did start a company called Engineering You, and so I have not only grown through the financial coaching, but now I do some of the early career coaching as well, self leadership, and so that has grown as well. So it's just a passion of mine, and like I said, I'm fortunate enough that I'm in a financial position that I don't have to make what I could be making and be able to venture out and try to build some of these things on the side without having to work 40 to 50 hours of engineering to pay the bills and then work from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. every night to try to make up for it. So I have a lot more of a balanced life approach that way. So it's just been, I just love talking about it.
Yeah, and I think yeah, money is a topic that is really hard to bring up to, and it's kind of awkward to talk with friends and even with family about it. But I think the more you talk about it, the more you uh, share your experiences online, the easier it gets, and people can open up. Right now, I mean, my mind is on the PE exam, and I know it doesn't have a really high pass rate, and I know there's a solid chance that I didn't pass. And just talking about it with other people that haven't passed it, and realizing that I'm not gonna be the first one that didn't pass or the last one that didn't pass is understanding and bringing perspective to that. It's a hard exam. I know many people that haven't passed it one, two, three, four times. So it's something that I don't want it to happen, but at the same time, just talking about it and normalizing failure and normalizing debt and normalizing having struggling with money and having the challenges, I think is very important. And hopefully, this conversation is showing people that. Um,
Yeah. Well, here's a little truth for you.
Go
I
ahead.
failed it my first time. So
Yeah.
I follow you on Instagram. I saw all of your little study sessions that you posted on there. The fact that you studied that hard, I have high hopes for you.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, a lot of sacrifices from my part, from my family's part. I was studying pretty much Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So um, yeah, it was tough. So I'm hopeful I don't have to go through this again. But I know if I have to, I'm not gonna be the last one or the first one to do it. So one of the last questions I have for you is, what advice do you have for someone that is currently on the paycheck to paycheck cycle? Like they get their paycheck and immediately they have to dump it on bills, on debt, on hopefully a little bit of savings. What's the best way to get out of that cycle?
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of people that I work with that, are engineers. I mean, us engineers, we make decent income. Right out of
Yeah.
school, you should be making a good chunk of change. Uh, and so a lot of times I find that people just don't know where their money is going. They don't understand they don't really even know what their existing situation is. They know the result of that, which is they have no money, but they don't really know what is causing that. So when I work with people, it's the first thing we do is look back at your last few months of expenses and see where that money is going. And then I ask them, is that in alignment with what you value? Is spending $1,500 a month on food and entertainment where you really want your money to go? And if they say yes, sure, there's no judgment. It's personal finance. You do what you want to
Mhm.
do. But if you're really struggling and you're living paycheck to paycheck, I don't know why you would want to continue doing that when you could make a change. So somebody living paycheck to paycheck, be honest with yourself. I had so many uncomfortable realizations about myself and my immaturity, my lack of knowledge, um, things that I was doing wrong that I had to admit, which, we don't always love admitting our mistakes and our shortcomings. Uh, but learning that about myself and then making a plan to change, and then like now, like I said, I keep my emergency fund where I can't see it. That's because if I saw it, I would like to spend it. So just really having that self-awareness when it comes to your money is going to be huge. And then from there, you start the budgeting, then you start the paying off the debts and the savings, and you start to do that. But if you were just starting, figure out where that money's going, see if that is actually where you want it to go, and then make a change. And then the last thing would be you might figure out that you just don't make enough money. As engineers, I don't run into that as often. Most of the time, it's just bad spending habits. Um, but there are people that maybe they're living in a place where the expenses are super high, and engineering is going to be very difficult to pay the bills, which is unfortunate. And so being honest about that situation and not being too proud to say, okay, I need to either get a second job or I need to consider a life change or life location change or whatever it might be. But you just need to understand your existing situation.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know for me, yeah, it's kind of having a budget and seeing exactly where your money's going. I create a spreadsheet just from scratch. Just I'm an engineer. I like the numbers and I like tweaking spreadsheets and everything. But it was very helpful to see that. I mean, some months we were way over budget on food. Maybe some other months we were driving a little too much and we were over budget on gas. But it's seeing where the money is going, and sometimes you're really cutting as much as you can, and there's still a little bit of bills that you cannot pay every month. So in that case, this again, like what you said, finding a new location, maybe getting a second job, doing something else to earn more income is what necessary. Something that has helped me is knowing that my the paycheck I receive already is taken out the 401k, which has a company match. We also save money for the HSA, for medical bills, and that money we don't even see even on the paycheck. Like it's just gone. Like we don't even know it exists, but we know it's growing in their accounts. And the moment we have a medical emergency, we can tap into that money. It's going to be there, and we're not really missing it right now because that's not part of our budget. So having a separate account, it's really easy to set up a direct deposit to a different account, and the employers are always happy to do that for you. It's something that as soon as you get that money out of sight and you kind of forget about it, you're not really counting in your budget. So it's an easy way to start building a little bit of saving, even if it's like $10 a month. Like just start with something. It's more of the muscle memory, the practice, and having that money kind of get out of your account and without even realizing it's there.
Yeah, you actually bring up a really good point. Is uh, when I talk about investing as early as you can, if I had gotten into the habit of investing 15% earlier on and where it's automatically deducted from my paycheck, that would have been so much better because I did not do that. And then when I started, it was like, oh my gosh, I have that much less money to work with because I was used to that income. But if I had just started by hitting that button to say invest X amount of percent, um, that would have been a lot easier. Wouldn't have been so painful at the time. But if you are like me and you haven't really done a lot of investing, or you have a lot of debts, or you need to save, whatever it might be, whatever step you are going to start undertaking right away, um, I always tell people to start small. I know other people are like, go all in and just go for it. And, that's a great strategy for some. But for some others who might be hesitant, give it a try. You know, just start off small, invest $5 or save $5 or put $5 towards the debt. It doesn't matter how big or small, just get started, just like you said. That's a really good
Yeah, it's
point.
just kind of that muscle memory of just forgetting about the money, just like kind of the exercise. And I feel like I'm sure is true for most people. It's just really hard to save the money because you see $5,000, $6,000 coming into your account and you get all excited. But if you only saw 4,500 or 4,000, and you know the other money was getting invested or put in a savings account, that's all the money you have to budget for, and you're gonna adjust accordingly. Another thing that I started doing is, I mean, each year you get a raise. I don't know, 3, 5%, maybe sometimes more. Is increasing your 401k or your savings by 1%, and you still get a 2% raise, and you can see more money in your account, but you're saving more money. So that's another easy way that I found that um, I can start saving more money without even realizing I'm saving more money because it's money I'm not really seeing.
Yeah, your cost of living can increase very quick if you don't get that automatically taken out early. So that's a great tip I've heard before too, and it's something I would recommend as well.
Yeah, you will find ways to spend the money you have.
Oh yes.
Okay, so let's just bring everything together. Graduating from school, trying to get out of debt. The people got out of debt. What's next after that? Like, what should people start planning for their financial life? For uh, best ways to, and this could be an entire episode, but just kind of give us a little snapshot of the financial life after having all the debt, and ways to optimize savings and investing and everything after we're kind of done with the debt.
Boy, I think it kind of all ties, like it all ties into what is that end goal that you have? Are you wanting to retire at 35, which is entirely possible? Retirement has nothing to do with how old you are. Retirement has everything to do with how much money do you have to live on, right? And how little expenses you have. So if you wanted to retire at 35 and you knew that right out of college, your life is going to look a lot different than somebody who has no desire to retire at 35 and they're like, yeah, I'll work till I'm 50, 55, 60 years old. Their strategy will be a lot different, at least for those first 10 to 13 years, those hustle years, if you want to call them that. So I think everything really depends on kind of what you desire long term at the end. Now, it's when it comes to like life planning and long term thinking, sure, it's great to have an idea, and then work backwards and work a plan starting from there, and then revise that plan every year or so and reevaluate. Is this still what I want? But if you don't think about that when you're 20, 21, right out of college, uh, it might be very hard to retire at 35 if you only realize that when you're 32, you know? So I would rather err on the side of caution and think, you know what, maybe I want to do that. And so I'll start that way and then maybe I can relax later on. So, so I think everything just kind of is just think long term thinking. What values, do you value, uh, and just staying in alignment with that. And don't let other people affect your decisions. I will admit I let my other friends in affect the way I do things. Especially in my 20s, and I would try to keep up, or I would try to do things that I didn't really care about looking back. I'm like, man, I really hurt myself there. So just pick your head up. So in my coaching with Engineering U, I talk all the time about, get your head up, look up, and see what opportunities are out there. See what opportunities you want to go for, and things just seem to fall in place when you start to think that way.
Yeah, and planning is super important, and it's super easy to see how much money you have to invest if you are 30, 40, 50 years to get that target goal. There's plenty of calculators online. You can assume 7, 8% annual returns, or even just put in a Google sheet, and there's a formula that calculates the future value, and you just need to put how much money you need to put each month to get to that value. And I think it is the tools that we have right now. It just makes it a lot easier to make those plans, and and just be better prepared for retirement. And like you said, some people may want to retire at 30 years old and they have to save 70-80% of their income, or some people just want to work the rest of their lives. I feel like I really like engineering and I really enjoy it, so I want to work until I'm 50, 60, maybe even 70 in engineering. Other people don't feel that way, and that's okay. But that's kind of creating the plan that works for you and the plan that works for your family, and seeing, and the earlier you start planning, I think the easier it is to hit that target goal. Like you said, if you start planning at 32 and want to retire at 35, it's going to be basically impossible. So it's really easy with the tools we have right now to get to that target and do planning. And I'm sure you have a lot of resources on your website, and it's just easy to find that information right now. So
Oh yeah, it's all over. It's all over the place. You can find it with a simple Google search for sure.
yeah, absolutely. And we'll link your website. I'm sure you have a lot of great resources there. One last question I have for you is, how can we continue engineering our future?
Oh man. Well, whenever we engineer things, we figure out kind of what the problem is, and then identify what the problem is and identify some alternatives that could be the fix. And then the very next step is to identify the existing conditions. You know, you, engineering terms, you got to look at the utilities and right of ways and stuff
Mhm.
like that. What is happening with that spot? Because it's going to be impossible to figure out how to get from A to B if you don't know where A is, right? So I think right now the biggest thing I would recommend for people is get really clear on where you are right now. After you do the planning, get very clear and honest, and don't be embarrassed by what you find. If it's something that you're not proud of, you don't love, it's just consider it a blessing that you figured it out now rather than 10 years from now when you finally pick up your head.
Yeah, it's creating a plan, getting educated, read articles, books about finance, or this applies to any other topic, but kind of here on the topic of finance, just read different perspectives. People like Robert Kiyosaki that loves debt and leverages debt for his real estate business, or people like Dave Ramsey who hates debt and he wants to pay cash for his house. Two different opposite sides of the spectrum, but finding what works for you, and maybe someone in the middle that works perfectly for you, and creating that plan around it, finding and defining your goals, it's going to be really important. Thank you, Nicolai, for coming to the podcast. It's been great to talking to you. I know we've kind of been following each other for a little while, but it was great talking about this topic. I know you're very passionate about it. You have your own kind of business around it, so it's great. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Where can people find you? We'll link everything on the show notes below. But yeah, where can people find you? And just any last words for the listeners?
Oh, awesome. Well, again, thanks for having me. I absolutely love talking about this topic. People can find me at my website, www.engineeringu.org. And then if you wanted to even contact me, my email's on there. You can always send me an email, ask me questions. I have a couple courses that on there, and actually, if you don't mind, I have a financial course that I'm going to be uploading hopefully this summer. That I might even ask for some people to audit it. So if they wanted to do that and they're interested, they could always just email me and get on that list before I do the official launch. That would be great. So thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed this today.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks for sharing all the great things you're doing in finances. It was really inspiring to hear that you went from negative 140,000 to plus many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's something that is not easy, and it's great to hear these stories, because sometimes we get numb with social media, seeing people that are rich and maybe they have a lot of debt behind the scenes. So it's great to hear the story of like real engineers doing real work in terms of finances. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you.